about the legacy of the late Sheikh Mahmud Effendi. But before we get there, we're going to ask him about the institute that he's working at, and also his interest in the legacy and sharing all of this very important information with not only us here in South Africa, but the rest of the global Muslim Ummah. Omar, Assalamu alaikum, welcome back to the program.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It's very nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for your valued time. Talk to us a little bit about your work at the IDVDF and then your interest in the late Sheikh Mahmud Effendi, how you believe he's touched the lives of billions of Muslims all around the globe. So let's start with the IDVDF first.
The IDDEF, there's no V there. I'm sorry. There must have been a misunderstanding there.
My
IDDEF,
apologies. My apologies.
perfectly fine. I assume when I translated the actual meaning of the acronym, that might have confused somebody. It stands for the Federation of Associations that Value Humanity. In Turkish, the acronym is IDDEF. We here at IDDEF, that's how we pronounce it. We here at IDDEF, we focus. Our main focus is on education. We do a lot of work with supporting schools and madrasas in different parts of the world. We also do humanitarian aid. But the main star of the show is the education side of things, the funding of schools, the funding of teachers, the funding of students, to ensure that all Muslim kids all over the world can receive a proper, healthy Islamic education, because that's one of the things that's missing in a lot of parts of the world, especially in Africa. You go to a place, there's a lot of missionary schools, but there's no school for a Muslim kid. For instance, we went to Uganda. We were in a place called Camp Soroti, towards the northeast of Uganda. We went there. It's a Muslim town, primarily by, the most of the population is Muslim. There is a Muslim school set aside for the Muslim kids there, but the principal and the teachers, they're all Christians. We spoke with them and they say, we want to help serve the community and whatnot, but still there's a gap. There's this thing that we're missing as Muslims, and we need to fill that. And that's what we want to do here at IDDEF. That's our main goal. We do humanitarian aid, boreholes, wells, water treatment facilities. We have several orphanages. Every Qurban, we have, animal slaughter to give out to the poor. We build mosques. We even have a few bridges that we're building in different parts of the world. But the main focus is the supporting, the funding, the coordinating, and the planning of education efforts all over the Muslim world. That's the main goal. And I was surprised. I had heard of IDDEF before I had started working here. But when I came and actually started working, I saw the scope. We have schools everywhere from Serbia to Albania to Kazakhstan to Bangladesh to Indonesia and Africa. Alhamdulillah, there are Muslims all over the world, and we plan to be wherever Muslims are in need, inshallah.
May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your efforts. Just to add to that, we do have a sizable Turkish community here in South Africa, and they are doing amazing work. You might have heard of the Nizamiya Mosque Masjid. I'm not sure if they're part of IDDEF, and they are also running a couple of schools in disadvantaged areas. So alhamdulillah for that. As I've said, I'm not sure if they're part of your group, but they are doing amazing work. Let's then get to the heart of the matter, and that is obviously the legacy of a great man who has passed on at the ripe old age of 93. Alhamdulillah, he suffered a short illness and thereafter he passed on to the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. What can you tell us about this great man? What has he left behind? How has he touched your life and the lives of billions of Muslims around the world?
What he left behind is, I could comfortably say, thousands upon thousands of students who he taught and educated personally, hundreds of thousands of people who listened to his sermons, and through the effect of those sermons upon their souls, dedicated their lives to Islam. And through the combined efforts of those thousands of students and those hundreds of thousands of people who dedicated their lives to Islam, we have millions and millions of people who received a proper Islamic education by the works of Sheikh Mahmud Effendi. I can comfortably say that there are millions of people in Turkey who through the barakah of listening to his words, to his sermons, to his preachings, to his teachings, dedicated their lives to living in accordance with the sunnah, dedicated their lives to the service of Islam, who spent every waking minute of their day thinking, how better could I further the interests of the Muslim people? How better could I further the capacity for education in Muslim lands? That's what he left behind. I was not surprised at his funeral, but I remember reading that there were about 3 million people who came to his funeral on Friday after the Jummah prayer. His effect upon people is honestly, it's hard to comprehend, because he served as an imam, and he not just as an imam of a mosque, but he served in the sense of his da'wah, in the sense of his sermons, for a period of nigh on 50 years. When he first came to Istanbul, at that time, the part of town that I currently live in, and the part of the town where the mosque he served in, it was there were bars up and down the street. There was an open air cinema nearby. Down the street, there's a big church. It's a center for the Orthodox Christians here in Turkey. But over a time of 40 years, eventually all those bars closed down. Eventually, that open air cinema, they bought the land and they turned it into a center for memorizing the Quran, a madrasa for hifz al-Quran. And over time, the entire place changed. When you walk down a street, any street you walk down in that vicinity, I can point out that apartment building, that's a madrasa. That apartment building, that's a school for girls. That apartment building, that's a school for small children. He genuinely changed the face of that neighborhood, and through there, he genuinely changed Turkey as a whole through his sincerity. Because the one thing that when you came to him and he spoke to you, the only thing he ever told you to do was to be a servant to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The only thing he told you to live your accordance by is by the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. He said, whatever you are, until you're 90 years old, study, learn, acquire knowledge. Later on, he amended that statement. He said, previously I had said until you're 90 years old, study and acquire knowledge. That's not enough. Even if you're 95, you need to be studying. You need to be acquiring knowledge. To live your life in accordance with the sunnah, to spend your time learning your faith, and to live every second of your life as if Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is watching you. That's what he taught. And his legacy is millions of people who learned that from him because he practiced it himself, who learned that who saw it in him and taught it to others. I know from many of my teachers who spent their day with him, most days of the week, he would be in the mosque with his students, or he would be going out to sermons. He would be busy. Either he'd be teaching a class, he'd be giving a sermon, or he'd be listening to a class, listening to a lesson. And when he went home, it would usually be around 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. His wife, she passed away previously. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant mercy on her. She was bedridden for a long period of time. He would come home at like 12 a.m. at night. He would spend half an hour or an hour with his wife, speaking with her, spending time with her. He would then sleep for maybe an hour and a half, and then return to the mosque at 3 o'clock for Hajj, for Qiyamul Layl, with his students, with the disciples. This was the kind of life he led. He spent very little time for himself. He would take 2 months of vacation time in the summer, and he would go around Turkey to different villages, to different towns, to different cities to preach and to speak to people there. He lived his life 100% dedicated to Islam. He lived his life, every second of it, dedicated to the furthering of the Muslim Ummah. And when people saw that, it truly made a change. It truly made a difference. The legacy he left behind is millions of people who learned from him. The creed that he left behind is devotion to the sunnah of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and devotion to Islamic knowledges, and the revival of the Islamic Ummah and the Muslim people as well through these two methods: dedication to the Sunnah and dedication to Islamic knowledge. That's, if I wanted to summarize his legacy and his life, that would be it. There's one very famous saying of him. He had said, "I personally know 4,000 actions during the day. They're in accordance with the Sunnah." We call them Sunnahs. So I know 4,000 Sunnahs. If any of you see me purposefully not do any three of them, never come to me. Don't pray behind me. This is how devoted he was to the Sunnah. And this is how genuine he was in his dedication to the Sunnah, and how certain he was in his dedication to the Sunnah.
He's written a Quran commentary in Turkish called Ruhul Furqan. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Ruhul Furqan, what it is, it's a commentary. It's an interpretation of the Quran. He started writing it for a period of time. It is a very nice commentary. It's in Turkish, unfortunately. So unless you know Turkish, you won't be able to benefit from it. What we can comfortably say is Ruhul Furqan is an essential summary of interpretation of the Quran through the most famous texts, and with his own explanations upon it. For a period of time, he himself was writing it, but then he turned it over to a commission of his disciples, of his students, and they're the ones who are continuing to work with it today. But to be honest, more than his books, what he truly left behind was his sermons to people, how he spoke to people. I mean, anybody in Turkey, genuinely, if you find somebody who has a bit of a religious leaning, speak with them, and they can tell you, oh, yeah, he came to my village like 30-something odd years ago, and he spoke to me, and because he spoke to me that way, I decided to start praying 5 times a day properly. Rather than his written words, it was a spoken word that really left a mark on this world.
Undoubtedly, this has left a huge gap in not only in the life of Turkish Muslims, but Muslims all around the world. What about his disciples or his students, people that, were he's following his teachings? Do you believe there is someone or a group of people that could continue the type of work that he had started that many years ago, 50 or more years ago?
Definitely. I definitely, because I can say that because what he taught to his students was to go out and do the same thing that he did. So yeah, like even 30 years ago, there were students of his who went out, who opened schools of their own, and who started teaching. What I could say is the most devoted teachers, the most devoted of his students, went out and started doing what he did. They opened up schools in different parts of Turkey. They started giving sermons to people, and they started educating the Muslim Ummah. He didn't just teach us, that those things are valuable. He also ensured that his students went out and did the same. We, as teachers of Sheikh Mahmud Effendi, we don't have a single organization, as in like an official school. We all go here. No. All of his students, they went out and they opened their own schools. I studied at one school. It was opened up by one of his students named Mahmud Veren. There's another school down the street that was opened up by one of his students, Recep Eryiğit. In another part of Turkey, for instance, in Bursa, there's a branch of schools that one of his students opened up. In Ankara, there's another branch of schools opened up by one of his students by the name of Munir Hoca. And yeah, so his work was already continuing during his life. So with his passing, there's not going to be any kind of an empty space, because it was already continuing. What's going to be empty, it's going to be a space in our hearts that's going to be empty, but there's nothing to do about that.
Okay, with just a half a minute to wrap up time, what is the one thing you want to leave us with as far as this amazing human being is concerned? He's passed on, Allah grant him the highest stages in Jannah, inshallah. What is the one thing you want to leave us with?
The one thing that after an event like this, the one thing we should realize is so we have this example of a person who left a mark upon the world, who brought 3 million people to his funeral, who brought the president of his nation to carry his casket. Mind you, that president, he also listened to him in his youth. We see this man who left this mark upon the world in a time in Turkey where what he did was illegal. It was actually codified illegal. Growing out your beard, wearing a turban upon the hat, learning Arabic, all these things were actually illegal. Codified by law. He was tried for this. He was taken to court over this. This man who left this mark upon the world, what we have to understand is he left this mark through his sincerity, through his devotion, through his effort. Turkey went through a cultural revolution where the government tried to induce certain changes to resemble European countries, to resemble European cultures and societies. He did the complete opposite. And through his efforts, he actually stopped that dead in its tracks. We see this man who left this amazing mark upon the world, and we have to understand he did it because he lived his life according to the Sunnah. He did it because he devoted himself to the Sunnah. We did it because he was sincere in all his actions. There was no material gain. There was no hope of some kind of a governmental position. Through his entire life, officially, he was never more than just any random imam at a mosque. But through his sincerity,
Alhamdulillah.
people treated him the way he deserved.
What an amazing man. What a legacy. Shukran very, very much for sharing that with us. And by the way, all of those, you spoke about 3 million people being at his funeral. You spoke about Erdogan being one of the pallbearers at his funeral. I actually saw all the pictures, all the footage of that. So you are, obviously you're sharing the absolute truth and facts with us this morning. Alhamdulillah, may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept all of your efforts, all the efforts of IDDEF, and may the legacy of this amazing man live on in our lives. Sheikh Mahmud Effendi, may he never be forgotten. May we always remember him. May he enjoy the higher stages in Jannah, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum to you. The time is exactly 8:37. In a minute or two, we're going to be crossing over to Kurtuba in Linbro Park, and my colleague Inayat Wadi is standing by to talk with us.